Hey everybody, welcome back to the sanctuary. So, Memorial Day is right around the corner, and it brought something to mind that really strikes home for me as a veteran. This is something a lot of people always have questions about, so I'm going to do my best to shed some light and impart some knowledge. Now, by now, I'm sure some of you are wondering what I'm rambling on about. I'm talking about coins. Specifically, I'm talking about coins that you will likely find on headstones and other grave markers of deceased military veterans and sometimes other people. Now, to begin with, I do want to point out that this practice is not biblical. Depending on what you read, this practice is often considered to be traced back to old Roman or Greek culture, but the origins are ultimately unknown, and the practice is often associated with those pagan practices of placing coins on the eyes of the deceased. However, that connection is also inconclusive. Now, with that said, there are some things to know about how this practice is done today, and I bring it up because it can cause a bit of trouble if the wrong person thinks you're dishonoring the dead. And because this is also one area, when you're looking at death, people get emotionally carried away and they don't always think about things the way that they should, and they don't always approach things the way that they should. In addition to that, like I said, Memorial Day is right around the corner, and as we all know, a lot of alcohol is consumed during this holiday. With that said, let's go in, and I'm going to tell you what exactly these coins are and what happens with them as well. So, as you'll find, there actually is, at the end of all this, a good purpose that they go towards. All right, so the most common coins you're going to find are pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters. We're going to go into each one accordingly, and then I'll go into a couple of other things that you may find as well. So, of course, first off is the penny. A penny simply means that someone came by and paid their respects. They don't need to have any kind of actual relationship with the deceased. It's merely a token to show that they stopped by. This can be anyone, and it's done as a sign of respect. Next up is the nickel. Now, this is where things are starting to get a little more intimate. A nickel means that the person who visited went to training with the deceased. Now, depending on what branch of service you were or the person was in, you're looking at boot camp or basic training, whichever. It could even be by some considered to be the occupational school. What the school that they went to for what their job was going to be in the military, or like as the Army has it, AIT, that sort of stuff. Any of these kinds of schools. And let's face it, training is a very tender time for most. It's the first time they've actually left home, and it's not like they just get to leave and go back to it at the end of the day. They're there. So, add to that the stressors of training and the environment itself, you find new lifelong friends and extended family. On top of that, they're learning the basic skills needed to serve, their country within a specific job. And a lot of veterans, myself included, this is where, you make some of your lifelong friends. I still talk to people I went to boot camp with to this day. Now, the next coin up here that we're going to talk about, the next token is the dime. This is going to be the most common token that you'll find. A dime shows that the person who stopped by actually served with the deceased. Now, this may be the same unit, duty station, a joint operation, etc., etc. Don't think that this is just limited to a branch of service either. In addition to different units working together, sister services work together regularly as well. A great example of this would be Navy corpsmen serving in the Marine Corps. This happens every day because the Marine Corps doesn't have its own medical service. During my time in the Corps, I actually spent a brief time working with the Air Force. So these things happen all the time. And because of that, you might actually be surprised to learn of all the people a service member had the opportunity to work with and befriend. All right, next up is going to be the least common coin, but it's one that pulls at the heartstrings of people the hardest: the quarter. A quarter shows that the person who stopped by was actually with the deceased when they died. So, as you can imagine, this is one of the hardest because nobody witnesses death and goes unmarked. This is something that carries on with you until it's your time to pass. It doesn't matter, if it was in times of conflict or times of peace. Death is a very distinct experience. And especially, when it's somebody you cared about and you loved, it changes things. Now, with that said, there are a couple of other types of coins that you may or may not come across. Excuse me. I'll go into these things individually as well. After that, I have something else of merit that you may find of interest as well. So the first of which I'm sure some of you have already guessed at, and it's probably because you're a veteran or you've worked with veterans or some kind of first response service, and this is the challenge coin. Now, while they don't have a monetary value as far as spending it or anything like that, what they represent to others is often considered to be of more value. You see, they show that the coin bearer belongs to a certain unit or participated in certain actions. Yes, some people pay to collect them, but many of them, the ones that truly have the most value, they can't be purchased. And they're not just going to be given out; they're earned. When you're first attached to a unit, it's not common practice to just walk in the doors, be like, "Hey, I'm so and so," and they just, "Hey, welcome aboard," and they hand you a coin. It doesn't work that way. Instead, you work. You go to work. You do the things you're supposed to. You earn your way in. You get to know people, and you're not just an assigned body, but you become part of that family, a part of that unit. And like I said, certain actions as well, because even those, certain people are, the people are limited, so it's a very small group. It's very niche. It's a good identifier. So these are very prized trinkets. They're very coveted. Even outside of the military, you'd be able to find very specific coins representing very specific groups, especially in first response: firefighters, police, EMTs, dispatchers, and various others. So when you find one at a gravesite, it is very likely that it was left by another brother or sister in arms. Okay? Now, the next is not a common sight here in the U.S., especially the further you move inland and away from the coast. And that would be foreign currency. Believe it or not, yes, foreign currency. Not only is it a good sign, or I should say, great sign of respect to find it, but even more so when it's placed and it also has a local currency left with it. Kind of side by side, and it's easy to identify that they were meant to be placed together. It is a great sign of respect. What's more, I should say, this is more common at grave sites that are overseas, especially places like in Europe. And occasionally you'll see this elsewhere, but you think of the graveyards and everything after World War II or even World War One. They're in France and other places. And if you're wondering why this would happen today, especially with foreigners, keep in mind all branches of service, they do joint training and joint operations with other countries where they're also going to make friends. So on top of that, while we work in the military, we work with people from other countries regularly as well. Translators, secretaries, transportations, various logistics, the list goes on and on. We work with a lot of different people. Even civilians, security corporations. My time in Japan, we had local nationals that worked security at the gate, along with camp guard and the EMPs and everything. We love them; they're great people. So you do meet a lot of people and get to work with a lot of really cool people that way as well. So going on, you know, um, before I go into what all happens with these coins, let me go into something that may really be surprising for a lot of people. These things don't always happen on military grave markers. You may be surprised to see these things on civilian markers as well. And it's actually happening more and more often and with similar parallels. The penny showing that someone stopped by to pay respect. A nickel representing that they went to school together. This could even be college or trade school. A dime indicated that they worked together at some capacity in life. And a quarter showing that they were with the person when they died. If you're wondering why that's what's happening, I could think of several people that have worked in law enforcement and EMS, fire, uh, nurses, especially like in emergency rooms that, maybe a particular death just hit them really hard where they did everything they could. And, it was just, it was their time. The Lord said, nope, that's it. And called them on. So, civilians do go out and they do participate in this as well. So don't think that you can't leave some kind of trinket or anything if you didn't serve. Yes, you can. All right. I'm speaking specific, from the standpoint of a veteran here and all as well. Not the pastor side. All right. Like I said, we've already covered that. We know what's up. This is now we're just going into the practice. Now, here at this point, this is where I'm going to tell you what happens to these coins, and I'll implore you, please, 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 leave them alone. If you have kids or other people with you who don't know what's going on with these, please educate them and get them to leave the coins as well. All right. Now, if you go somewhere and a marker needs to be tidied up or anything, and so you move them for that, that's fine. Please do clean that marker and everything, but then put the coins right back when you're done. So what happens is there are workers or volunteers at various cemeteries and grave sites who do go around and they do gather up all these coins periodically, and these go into a fund to help with the needs of the graveyard, such as maintenance and groundskeeping. In some cases, even to help pay for the burial of other veterans or indigent persons as well, who maybe don't have anybody else there, with funds or anything. Or other various, veteran services, that sort of stuff. So most of the people who leave these coins and these trinkets, they know that this is what these funds are going to be used for. And let's face it, with the exception of the time that we spend at these sites ourselves, they're mostly forgotten about, and they can truly use any financial assistance that they get. So again, with that said, please leave the coins and leave the trinkets that you find, because these things, they can actually go on to bless, somebody else or another family that's struggling, and just, those funds do add up. A penny here, a penny there, a dime here, a dime there. Just like in your own life when you're trying to save, every little coin that you get, eventually it all builds up and it can go to something good. And that's what happens here. All right. So I pray that this has been informative and that it helps you or someone that you know to better understand the meaning, not only behind the coins, but what it means to those who leave them and who it can possibly go to bless. So I'll catch you next time. God bless. Take care.